GM Farcaster and all the ships at sea. We are here for a special summit today. We're doing a virtual summit for the next hour and a half. We're going to have 3 panels. We'll be doing the same tomorrow. And this was the brainchild of Sahil. So Sahil, while I tweet this out and tell people we're live and cast it out and tell people we're live, tell everyone sort of why you came up with this idea, like what's the purpose behind it, and what we're hoping to accomplish here in these panels today.
Morning, and thanks so much, Nownish Pro, for putting this together. There's all the hard work that you've put in, really, that I wanted to highlight, and we'll talk more about it through the next couple of days. But it's definitely not my brainchild. It is something that I had the opportunity and privilege to, help surface. We've been working with a lot of developers and community builders on Farcaster. And I think more specifically in the last 6 months, we've just gotten closer to all the folks who run channels on Farcaster. They're trying to build communities with channels. And I think we've heard a lot of their pain points. We've learned their excitement about how they want to leverage the social graph of Farcaster and all the building Legos, really, with channels, with frames, and how can they, run their communities here. So we wanted to use this as a platform for them to share their vision, their pain points, and really collaborate together. I think it is one of the, and we've all spent a lot of time on crypto Twitter, and
Too much.
I think in the last too much time, and I think
especially this week.
Farcaster is a special place. It may seem like a bubble to a lot of people on crypto Twitter, which is fine. That's all right. Yeah. But I think in this space, you have people who actually want to do better. They want to try and use this open social graph for doing things which we all kind of hope for, and it's really not possible on Web2 platforms or on crypto Twitter. So I think with channels, the vision is to actually try and form great communities which can survive, which can thrive, which can incentivize, which can use crypto rails. And there's a lot of exciting things that many channel mods are doing. So we thought, let's bring them together. Let's just do an exchange of ideas. Let's learn from each other, and let's see how we can set everyone up for success. And I think for us, from the OpenRank team, we've been, building a lot of infrastructure for Farcaster. We're also working on an app for communities and clients built on Farcaster. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we thought would resonate. We'll get feedback. So yeah, excited about the next couple of days. There's a bunch of different themes on how we can leverage channels to build communities. What are the tools missing for people who run channels, even for end users who want to consume content for a particular topic, let's say parenting or founders or even fun memes, right?
2 of my favorite, all 3 of my favorite channels.
Yeah, and yeah, they're amazing spots on Farcaster, and I would say on the internet, but how do we actually grow and scale them? So yeah, a bunch of exciting things.
So that's the discussion. That's the discussion for today. And we've got our first panel, the Farcaster difference, how to become a community entrepreneur. And I'm going to bring up our other 2 panelists, Humpty and Ted. And let's do a quick level set. Sahil, we didn't do really an intro with you, but you're building OpenRank. Ted, if you want to do a quick intro, and then I'm going to go to Humpty, and then we'll dive into some questions. So to you, Ted.
Hi, I'm Ted. I just joined the Farcaster team last week, Merkle team last week. But before that, I was an early power user and built and loved the Farcaster community, whether it was Club Ted or Farcaster Fridays or FarCon. So I've just been around the Farcaster community for a long time and love it. And yeah. Hopefully that's a good intro. Sorry.
It is a great intro. Community builder extraordinaire is your true title. Let's be honest. That's the real title here. And then second to only maybe Humpty with Crypto Sapiens. So Humpty, can you give us a quick intro to your background and why you're here with us today?
Hey everybody, thanks so much for having me on. Great to see so many friends. So, if you haven't heard of me, which is very likely, I'm Humpty. I am the creator of Crypto
Unlikely.
Sapiens. I've been in the space since about 2016, and throughout it all, it's always been about education. How can we get people onto crypto in ways that are meaningful? Uh, Working with them to try to make this whole very complex space a lot more accessible. Um, Recently, we've been pivoting Crypto Sapiens, or should I say, focusing Crypto Sapiens to talk to creators. We know that creators are doing a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to crypto, and GM Farcaster is a great example of this in terms of helping us understand what's new and novel, what's important, how can we connect with others like us, how can we find our tribes through channels. So advocating for that on Farcaster. And so, yeah, that's really my role in the space. And, Crypto Sapiens, the channel on Farcaster, has become a home for creators who are looking to understand what tools are available to them in this ecosystem so that they can grow a community and so that they can also make more money on chain.
Awesome. I love it. All right, we're going to dive in. The OpenRank team has been hard at work pulling together some questions for our panelists. And Ted, we have the first one going to you. In your experience on Warpcast, what is the vision behind channels and how can user interaction evolve this? And then second to that, what shifts are you seeing in how communities want to own and operate their channels? So first, sort of like, I think you can even speak to, you've been here a hot minute, FID 239. So you were here pre-channels, you were here when channels launched, you were here post-channels. Like, what do you see happening there and how can we make them better?
Yeah. Let me also just preface this. This is like my personal opinions.
Right.
This is not reflective of the team.
She's only been there for a week.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Don't want to get myself in trouble.
Ted, we will assume this disclaimer is true for anything you say today, so don't worry.
Yes,
Okay,
please keep that
amazing.
disclaimer
Thank
on
you.
there for let's not get her fired.
Let's see. So when the network was smaller when I first joined, it was like very easy to find people that you connected with or to find shared topics of interest and hobbies and discussions because it was small in nature. So it's like when you're at a party or like a dinner party, it's just like really easy to run into that. And then as the network grew, obviously that became more difficult. It's like trying to find a friend in like a huge concert venue, much harder. And so channels emerged as personally, like I think a great way to like a great discoverability mechanism is like, okay, like let me find people who are talking about food or like let me go find content about books. Let me go find content about the Super Bowl or NBA playoffs. There was a lot of different ways. And so I found it as a discoverability mechanism. And I think that's where I found it and liked it was, oh, I can discover other people who are casting about this. It's less ephemeral and more once something's in a channel, it can stay there. And so well, if I didn't see it in my timeline, then I might be able to go there and find new content. And I think as last year, we experienced like massive growth and influx and spam. And then these kind of open channels made it like where it used to be high signal to noise ratio, that kind of got warped. And so where they ended up transitioning to was like, okay, these are for communities. They're less so like these open interest topics. They're not hashtags, like they should be specifically for communities. And I think that was a great transition for people who are here and existing and like know how to use them. I think where there's still a lot of work that can be done is like, how do people discover them? Like, how do you actually utilize them best? Is it actually like now because people aren't using them as much or they're just putting stuff into the home feed? Like, how does somebody who's new and wants to learn about the creator experience know to go to Crypto Sapiens, or somebody who's doing media know to go to kind of like on-chain media? And I don't know if we've necessarily like cracked that yet. And I think some of like the permission levels and whatnot hasn't necessarily been there. So I think we're still figuring it out, but that's like my like love story with channels is like, oh, I found this as like a way to meet more people, which like as somebody who loves community, that serves an amazing purpose. How I would navigate and find and discover and visit them today, I don't know if we've optimized that within the Warpcast client, but I do know that there's people who love channels. for that purpose. So
me being one of them. I love channels. And I will say that I think there's so many different use cases too. And for me, like the ephemeral channels are really helpful for what you're talking about, discoverability. So for example, the Super Bowl channel, like people that I normally interact with may not be interacting with the Super Bowl and may not care. So I want to find those people who are watching this thing that I'm watching, and then we can interact. So that made it very easy to do that. So I think that has a purpose, as well as more of the longer term, like community channels. And to you, Humpty, on that note, longer term community channels, for you, in your experience in nurturing communities like Crypto Sapiens, what unique features or tools can we offer channels to create a self-sustaining community? And that is from the OpenRank team.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I found incredibly difficult when working with channels initially was that everybody who was coming into my channel kind of was being treated with the same hand as everyone else on Farcaster. Like there's one algorithm to rule them all. So whatever's happening on Farcaster, or should I say Warpcast, whatever is being applied to Warpcast is being applied to my community channel, in Warpcast. And what that meant was that visibility was a challenge for people who are coming into the channel and trying to engage and connect with us. If you were not necessarily a badge holder at one point, I remember a power badge holder, there were challenges with the way that you could connect and engage with comments and have others see you. So when I started seeing like these moderator bots that allowed me to segment or shelter my community from the Warpcast algorithm, to me, I found that to be incredibly powerful. One, it reduced a lot of the administrative overhead for channel owners, but also it allowed me to set a set of rules for people could follow, and they could understand very easily what are some of the things that we'd like for them to be casting into those channels. Kira just kind of superpowered that idea. They're and even more recently with what they've done with dynamic leaderboards, I think to me this is a really good way to surface people who are contributing regardless of their activity outside of my channel on Warpcast altogether. And I think this is really powerful because as we talk about new people coming into Farcaster, which anyone who I meet who's in the crypto space, I always encourage them to come onto Farcaster. It is difficult for them to find their tribe and to connect with people because they're small accounts. For whatever reason, they may not even be using the platform the way that the team intends for the platform to be used. And so they may be labeled or might not be, but it's very difficult for them to connect with, communities that are meaningful to them and people as well. And so when they come into the Crypto Sapiens channel that is moderated by Kira, that also has a channel token, they're able to not just be seen, but they're also able to be rewarded by our channel for their participation. And if for some reason the Warpcast algorithm believes that my recast, my comment is valuable, then if they're contributing or adding value to my community, if I recast or comment to what they're sharing in my channel, if that can help them grow within the network as a whole, I think that's super powerful. And so that's how I believe like channels play a very important role on Farcaster and Warpcast specifically, and how tools like Kira can help to enhance the experience, especially for new users.
Yeah, that's a great point for new users. If they can find channels that they really connect with, I think it also helps them stick a little better too. It makes it a little more sticky for them. Ted, I want to go back to you and just see if you have any comments on that. And also there's also different approaches to channels completely. Like you have some that are more like announcements, and then you have more like community. And I know you've built different ones that, when I think about FarCon, that's more like announcement sort of level, but Club Ted was very much a community. So in terms of like the tools that we have, is there anything that you've found really valuable that you've incorporated into a channel that you've found helpful?
Let me think through this. I think someone like Humpty, and Humpty's done a phenomenal job at this, is that like being a community builder, like really owning and managing and like wanting the best experience is like unique. I think we take for granted like everybody can't do that. Like some people just like their brains aren't wired that way. Otherwise, people don't have time or energy to do it. So like there's a whole variety of reasons. And so my thing is like, okay, we should actually make it as easy as possible or as intuitive as possible for people like Humpty or myself to be able to do some of these things. So that's like number one is like, I think that, and then you should show them as like a best in class example of like, okay, here's how to do it. I think other people who might have a desire to do it, but not like a natural inclination, want a playbook, like here, what are the rules of the road? Like, how can I learn how to do this? So that's one thing. From there, that's one. And I think the other thing is that you mentioned is like the new user experience is, again, I think about like showing up to your first day of like university. And you're like, oh, there's a bunch of like, I need to make friends. Like, how am I going to make friends here? Either some people ahead of time. So like, oh, you've like connected and made those ahead of time. That's really hard to do on Warpcast unless like somebody onboards you personally and there's no way to like easily connect your contact book. Nobody has each other's like phone numbers anymore. So then it's like, okay, like you go to like, oh, it's like, let me go to like the club day or like the sorority or fraternity stuff, or like, let me figure out like what I can do here. And I think channels can act as that, especially because a lot of people on Warpcast like aren't necessarily recognizable the same way that when you join Twitter, you have like a whole list of celebrities that you can follow. So I think that channels can serve as like, oh, here's like, let me go explore what's out there and like find a place where I can get my footing quickly or like more quickly before I decide to like, put in time and energy and effort, because I think it's just easier to start replying to things versus like, hey, let me like put a cast out there, it goes into the void. So that's just what I would say is I think the new user experience is really important, and channels can help improve that if done the right way.
When you bring in somebody new, and you've done that a jillion times, do you give them like, here's some channels that I think you should check out, or do any kind of like onboarding in that way?
When people join,
We
I'll
just added
usually
that to the invite, right? I think the invite has that now.
the invite
Where you
does
can
have
recommend.
channels, but I think you
Yeah.
can only recommend the
Like
channels
3.
that we can send out.
Oh, true, like the ones that are open to everybody, I
Yeah.
guess is probably it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I found that instead, like what I found to be like the most impactful is actually I'll be like, oh, just like make an intro post, say what you're interested in. And then I just CC, like I'll reply with like CCing the people that I think are like would be interesting for them to follow. Only because it's hard for me to stay up to date on all the channels.
Right.
And so,
Right.
and then you don't want to recommend a channel that like I'd be like, oh, this is great, but like the last post is showing from a month ago. It like seems
Yeah.
stale. So I kind of just tag people in and like hope that they'll respond. But that's at least what I've done to date. And I think that's a product of like again, channels not being like the perfect UX or like the ideal UX.
True. And Humpty, you were nodding your head, so I'm guessing that maybe you do some introing of channels to folks you bring
Yeah.
in?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
He's
I
like,
think
yeah, of course. The first thing I
think
do
as
is into the
advocates,
Crypto Sapiens channel.
I mean, technically, when like for example,
Yeah,
I'm hosting an
of
event
course.
at ETH Denver and it's focused on on-chain creators. The first thing I'm going to ask them to do is to join Farcaster and connect with the Crypto Sapiens community because we keep the conversation going there,
Yeah.
right? I'm an advocate for Farcaster, right? As an advocate for Farcaster, I need to make sure their experience is a a pleasant one. And in order to do that, I can't just throw them into the void and have them cast and nobody engage and then potentially be marked as spam. That'd be horrible. They would churn, and I don't think anybody wants that. Certainly, I don't want to be advocating for something where people are going to have a bad experience. So, as an advocate for Farcaster, I'm also a steward. I bring them into the Crypto Sapiens channel. I have rituals where they can participate in conversations. So it's like I think there's like 3 different rituals per week where they can comment, and
So
I'll
just to be
engage with
clear,
that.
rituals are not like some kind of goat sacrifice. This is the rituals that are built into channels where you can set a prompt that'll go out automatically. So just for those who may not know, I don't want them to think you're doing some kind of weird animal sacrifice.
Yeah, I mean, I do
something.
use humankind candles all over my house, so some might think that I have a ritual going on now. It does smell very beautiful in here.
They already
but no,
think we're a cult, Humpty. We don't want to make it worse.
It's okay. We're the nice kind.
It's a good
Anyways, that's what I do. Like, I bring them into the channel and I have the conversation there and I nurture that relationship. And as their own audience grows, as they find their tribe outside of Crypto Sapiens, they're more successful and better for it. But yeah, that's absolutely do recommend channels. And if there are other channels that I would recommend, I would definitely connect them, similar to what Ted said, to those individuals. One thing I thought about as Ted was talking about, and I believe actually you kind of kicked that off in terms of like these new set of channels that people can start with. Starter packs, it's a great way to connect people to individuals, but I think starter packs, as far as channels go, would be also a wonderful idea in terms of like saying, hey, are these your interests? These are some of the channels you should follow, right? Because again, I'm still bullish on channels. I think part of the reason why we're having this conversation is because there's a very there's two camps to Farcaster, right? You have your everything goes on the main feed, it's like Twitter, and then there's the other camp, like everything goes on channels because it's like Reddit. There's still a bit of like confusion in terms of the way that you're supposed to engage on Farcaster, but I do believe that you can succeed with both or either, as long as you're connecting with individual channels and people in a meaningful way, being strategic, not just kind of like casting random stuff into the void either.
Right. Yeah. Especially when you're new, it definitely helps to have somebody stewarding you. Ted, I love that with the intro post, but also starter packs are an easy way to like even enhance that experience. I'd love to see channels added to starter packs. So have it be users and channels for topics. That way you have sort of everything in one spot. Sahil, I want to get you into this conversation. Question for you. As a champion of channels on Farcaster, how can tools Kira offers help enhance engagement or address better channel user experience? And I'd say like any other tools as well that you may recommend or feel is helpful.
Yeah, so I think great points by Ted and Humpty, and I don't want to talk about Cura as much, but this is really great.
Okay.
I as you mentioned, as you titled me as the champion of channels,
It's your your
wanted to-
team's trying to slide in those moments for you. So give them the questions.
I think it's a safe space. I love to take the contrarian bet on Farcaster, where I do feel like channels I have a huge potential. There's something special, and I think just to piggyback on the last point that Humpty made, I think with Warpcast, there's too much of a burden for Warpcast to kind of drive a bunch of top of the funnel usage onto the Farcaster social graph. But with amazing primitives, of course, with frames, with channels, with so many other tools for devs, I think it is a good moment in time where we do see that this Twitter-like mold or form factor and this Reddit-like mold and form factor. I think there's a fair, stab at seeing if it works, and it has to be emergent. And I think channels are fitting into that community's persona pretty well, and we have to do justice to it because it's a special moment in time. We almost have a great I don't want to this is we use this so often in crypto. It's like decentralized tech stack or decentralized this and that, right? But it actually is true. You can have your identity in crypto rails on Ethereum or whatever chain. You can have an open social graph finally on Farcaster, and you can have your own feeds, algo curation, permissionlessly, right? And I think you finally have that. And this is kind of what gives us an opportunity to create piggyback on that and create communities which are open, autonomous, not dependent on centralized let's say algos or whatever, and let them flourish. And I think Warpcast doesn't have to try and cater to all of this, and that's where OpenRank's been really trying hard to understand if there's a space where we can take a stab at that, and we'll probably hopefully see a few experiments in the next few weeks. But I do feel like that is the mindset that we're bringing in. And I think one of the analogy that we talk a lot about in the team is a channel today on Farcaster more specifically is like a city in a state where it's still governed by the state, governance, the rules, which is like people complain, hey, Warpcast, why are you giving me this feed? Sure, there's only one real estate that Warpcast can cater for, and you have to abide by the rules. They've already done a good job in giving you, opportunity with all these tools. You can keep your channel in a public mode or private mode. So there's a bunch of things which are already there for you to go and run your city. But I think channels can be like an island nation almost. Like they're supposed to be these different places on the internet where the the person who's actually spending so much time, like Humpty or Ted or many others, who actually invest so much time daily, if they're given the right tools, or if they have a pretty easy, they don't have to spend 10 hours, just probably spend a couple of hours, and that just creates a great experience for users, and they can exist permissionlessly. So you can have a base channel, you can have a degen channel, you can have a politics channel without having to define the same mold that all of these channels have to subscribe to, right? And I think one of the difficult yet paradoxically great things about channels is you can't fit channels into a single mode. There are so many different channel personas. There's so many different intentions. You might find a certain channel spammy if you're on Warpcast, but there's a pretty solid community that just wants to exist on that channel and talk about whatever, in whatever language, on whatever topic. And that's
Sure.
fine. Let them be. But you might get great content on politics if you're in the US, you're following elections, you have that, or you're at Eat Denver, you might find a channel to be super useful for seeing what folks are doing, what high signal, what Ted was mentioning, what are the high signal content around a particular event, and that's your place. That you spend a lot of your time on Warpcast because of that, right? So you can let all of these things be with channels if you give them the right tool. So I think that's really our North Star is create those open spaces. And the loose analogy is Reddit. I do think that's a form factor which is kind of exciting, and that's where we want to get to. And we've been with just with Cura, just having spent a lot of time with channel mods, what are their pain points, trying to stitch that experience together. And I think that is kind of the exciting thing, because specifically in crypto, you can see a lot of people actually are a part of Discord channels. They're a part of Telegram groups. They're a part of chats. And some of these, and even meme coins, are actually communities around a token, and they have so much kind of conversation happening.
Not all of them, but yeah.
Not all of them, not all of them, but it's
Some
it's
of
a
them
stretch.
are.
It's a stretch.
Yeah.
But I think that the whole idea of a community, we want to just give the right kind of stack for them to, and Farcaster is a great place to take a stab at that. So yeah, I think that's kind of my a stream of thoughts on channels, if you may. I had a lot of coffee, so I had a lot to to throw out there.
No, that's awesome. And we're about to shift to panel 2, and I do want to, I'm trying to show this and it's not letting me show. There we go. This is a question for Ted. How do we cultivate more community builders on Farcaster? Besides tooling, what else do we need to do? And this is probably a great question for you, but also like thinking in terms of growth of the network itself too, in general. So yeah, what do you think, Ted?
That's a great question. And I think that's part of what I'm looking to do as part of the team. And so I think it starts with like chatting with GM Farcaster community, Crypto Sapiens community, and like understanding what their pain points are and how we can improve that experience, which I don't know if we've like has put time and effort into before. I also think to just like celebrating them and like using them as an example is helpful. I think there's a lot that like it goes a long way to just be like, wow, I see what you're doing and it's amazing, and let us know how we can help and support. And so shifting into that. But if I had a good answer for it, I would tell you, but not there. Well, come back to me in like 2 weeks.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, we should give you at least a minute on the job before we expect results. This has been awesome. This has been panel 1. We are going to shift gears and move to panel 2. So we're going to reset, but thank you all 3. Bye, Ted. Thank you so much. Humpty, stick around. Don't move. I'm going to be moving some people around here. We're going to bring up Shazo, Andre, Eric, and Phil. And also, I'm going to bring up Gloria, and I am going to disappear for a minute. And Gloria, if you want to come on screen, Gloria is going to be our moderator for this panel. So I'm going to move myself down and turn it over. And for panel 2, just to intro this, we're going to talk about progressive ownership for communities and continuing to sort of focus on those channels that are community focused. So, Gloria, I am turning it over to you. So unmute and I'll be down below.
Great, so we're already starting. Awesome. 2 minutes late. Well, thank you guys so much for your time today to have this discussion. So I'm Gloria, and I work with the OpenRank Cura team. So we're building for communities on Farcaster to have better tooling to kind of grow and do more amazing things. But today's conversation for this particular panel, I'm so glad to have you all, because I know you have been expert, practitioner, and champion and thinker on this topic, which is about like how do we leverage, this special, offering from Web3, that is tokenization, but now to make it hyper financialized for community building rather than to leverage its power to actually serve communities. But before we jump into the conversation, I just want everyone to maybe give like a 1-2 sentence introduction of yourself. So yeah, a little bit of like your journey and who are you and what you're passionate about. Let's maybe start from the screen. So Humpty, do you want to kick off?
Sure, Jim, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, you weren't part of the previous conversation then. I'm Humpty, creator of Crypto Sapiens. We've been running a media platform for a little over 3 years now. Started as a podcast, continued to evolve as an incubator for creators, and is now a community focused on creators to help them come on chain meaningfully and grow their audience and make more money through the distributions that we have here. And Farcaster is one of the tools that we use in our tech stack to be able to help creators do that. So excited to be here.
Hiya.
Thank you.
My next? Cool.
Yeah, Andre, yeah.
Sure. My name's Andre. I'm Shazo on the internet. I'm mainly an independent open source developer. I maintain a bunch of big open source libraries. The latest one I'm working on is What's ABI. It helps it make Ethereum front ends more decentralized. I have a little bit of experience building little communities here and there of like co-funded a DAO and stuff like that, but just mostly focusing on improving decentralization across the stack.
Cool, I can go now. I'm Eric. It's nice to be on here. Been on Farcaster since early 2023. Know a lot of you guys from the feed. I guess you consider me more of a user, like, a creator, someone that's new to, putting my work on chain, and also building community on Farcaster itself. Background is more in the traditional financial space, been in crypto since 2017. And yeah, really just looking to bring artists together on Farcaster to help grow the protocol overall.
Awesome. So
I guess I'm up. Hi, nice to see you again, Gloria. My name's Phil. I have been on Farcaster since maybe 2021. I think I ran into Dan in Venice, where I was living at the time, and we were starting Bright Moments. I spend a lot of my time these days helping artists put work on chain and get paid for it.
awesome. I think you guys are too humble. You guys probably are the trendsetter, the thought leader on Farcaster. Also, the first question basically want to kind of dig out some of your insights and experiences. What have you been observing the experiments on utilizing tokenization for building communities? Do you have any examples you find novel or interesting you want to share? Anybody?
Yeah, I can kind of jump in. I think one of the things, Gloria, I know we've had a couple calls with JC, the guy that I've been helping. He runs the Nature channel. I also talk with Inceptionally from I Took a Photo and some of the other bigger creator channels. And one of the things that I notice first and foremost on Farcaster is it's highly participatory. Like a lot of people, view it more, I think, as an economy. There's a lot of incentive alignment on there, and it's it's very different from communities elsewhere on the internet, where it's obviously a lot of PvP in other social media. And so obviously I'm biased, but I think that that type of incentive alignment that we've seen so far with things like what Phil's building, obviously Humpty and OpenRank in general, putting tokens, aligning tokens with communities. I think we're really early on to that. One of the few experiments that I did just a few months ago was trying to see, with the photography community specifically on Farcaster, if we could align a token with putting work out, because obviously art in general is more individual focused at the start. And could we take something like themes with the Nature channel, for example, and really align artists in a way where we can also have a token that is these two things are working together, to grow as a community, and be rewarded for the value that artists bring. So ran an experiment with Touchgrass, used Coinbase galleries, and it was interesting. I think that what you guys are doing, obviously at Kira, there's gonna continue to be ways that we haven't thought about. I mean, it started with Degen, Moxie, obviously what Phil's doing with AMP, and a lot of other incentive alignment to make sure that artists who are contributing are being rewarded for those contributions. And what we see, last thing, is like a lot of the photographers that I've met on Farcaster, some of them have upwards of 200, even upwards of 500,000 followers over on Instagram, but they spend a lot of time on Farcaster because those incentives are aligned. So maybe they're only getting 20 likes or 50 likes on Farcaster, but they're still spending more time there because it's directly benefiting them in a way that they're not getting on other social media. So anyway, those are just some brief thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead, Andre.
Yeah, just wanted to throw in another lens in here. I really love that most people here are working kind of creator-centric ecosystems, whereas I'm one of the 9 moderators of the Ethereum channel, and it's a very different experience. Here we don't really, it's kind of like more of a overflow sink for everything in many ways. A lot of people want to spam the channel. A lot of people want to like reach the audience that we didn't really earn. We just kind of given by default, some like 300,000 as we were the default channel for a long time. So it's kind of a different challenge. There's different kind of groups of these communities. For example, the news communities, the like politics communities, they're not so much creator centric. They're just more kind of like people need to get some stuff out, and this is where they go. It's kind of interesting to see the kind of creator centric tooling and how the needs are different. Just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
So the question was about tokens and their role with communities on Farcaster.
Yeah. Do you see any interesting experiments or novel takes on this so far?
So I'm fortunate to have a lot of conversation time with Gloria. We've actually hosted a 4-part miniseries covering OpenRank and what they're doing on Farcaster. And I brought to them, even before a lot of the work that currently is available, like live, like dynamic leaderboards and channel tokens, some of the context from what was happening on Farcaster to them. And some of the experiments that I think most of us, if not all of us here, are very familiar with are DGen, as it launched as a token that was built around a community, right? A DGen channel, which it was able to reward people from that community initially through an airdrop, really for doing not much, but over time it has evolved into a much more sophisticated reward mechanism for people who are creating valuable content. Again, who makes that determination? The person giving that tip. There is no central authority saying this is valuable content, and that is a very powerful way of rewarding people as a mechanism for engaging and incentivizing people for that type of activity that you find valuable on an open social graph like Farcaster. I think we've continued to see these experiments grow over time. Like Ham, I think for anybody, again, in the Farcaster community, this is another example of how these token incentives can grow as you think about like DeFi as a way to extend the value of the token itself beyond as a token incentive to reward individuals. There's a very complex system. Deployer obviously is a very intelligent person in the way that they have thought out the different ways that the token can be used and staked and reward people over time. Moxie was another good example of that. Obviously, I think a little divisive because people were maybe spammed at one point for the creator tokens that were available, the channel tokens I believe that were also, or fan tokens, as they cover everything, the gamut of individuals and channels. But it was just, again, another way of trying to create a system around rewards. And obviously now biased here, but one of the early channel token projects, Crypto Sapiens, we really don't have to do anything. We worked with OpenRank to create a system by which the algorithm, based on the engagement an individual has in our channel, is automatically rewarded with this channel token. So again, it's a way to further decentralize the way that we reward individuals and the way that we can build communities in a decentralized way as well on Farcaster through this open social graph that we've been gifted.
Thanks, Amti. So, do you have a contrarian view, or you agree with some of these points?
I think a lot of good points. To be honest, I don't know. I haven't seen anything recently that's been super interesting to me. A lot of the stuff seems really complicated, and I don't have a ton of time to dig in. I wish I had more time. Ownership is really tricky. In a lot of places where people are, it's not totally legal to do it in a way that we wanted to, and hopefully that'll change soon. But to me, that's what I'm really excited about. Hopefully we can change some rules and regulations to make ownership actually possible, because I think that's going to be the big unlock.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. I want to kind of like just double click on some of the common points you all mentioned. It seems like if we can figure out some mechanisms to align contribution with rewards, we can potentially eliminate this problem that we've seen in the space, that's basically any kind of rewards just attracts bots and mercenaries and basically farmers, and you kind of collude, the original purpose of having this reward system. So is it something that we can learn from some other early tokens like Bitcoin or Ethereum when they're building really long time on the left side of the curve, rather than like having it quickly pumped and then dumped? Is that something that we need to also tweak when we think about like aligning timing, aligning contribution when we reward people? I'm going to throw it to Andre. Yeah.
I think a good example, Gloria, is even in, we could go all the way back to Bitcoin and ETH, and obviously strong community alignment. I'm sure Andre will have some key talking points on Ethereum itself. I'll just speak briefly on one that we see in Farcaster itself with the higher community. I think that they've done an incredible job with bringing unique talent together in the artist space and align around a meme. And I get, like that, meme culture might be a little dicey right now, especially from Solana, but like I think that when you bring together talent in a way and have people create art that's aligned with a meme and then own the token on top of it. Like I got, I'm sure many of us in here got the higher airdrop as well last year. And, anyone can participate. I think they call it, just like Martin says it all the time. It's like, there is no leadership. There is no direction. It's just anyone can contribute to the higher community. Anyone can, create art that's higher aligned. Anyone can own the token, and it just creates this like permissionless brand, that makes it so even you have outside companies. I think, I don't know if it was TLDR or someone, maybe it was Jacob from Zora, like, put the higher logo in the Zora Slack channel. And it's like, that's, just using a permissionless brand saying we are a part of this community too. And I think there's a lot of power in that. So that's with the token and artwork and, community. I think they've done an incredible job with that.
Yeah, I think you, Gloria, mentioned something about Bitcoin and Ethereum and, developing this on the left side of the curve, whatever that means. What I want to talk about is like what Eric brought up in terms of culture and hire. I think that's a perfect example of where we're at and actually where things always have been for a long time. Bitcoin, as much as it is an important technological artifact, whether you think of it as something that should be used as a transactional asset or something as a store of value, there was a cultural shift in what Bitcoin represented. And for anybody who bought Bitcoin, maybe not everybody, but for many, including myself, it was an alignment to those values of what Bitcoin represented and the future that I wanted to see in the world. And when I bought Ethereum, sadly not early enough, but later after I was in the crypto space for some time, it was also a signal for the cultural revolution of what it represented, of building on blockchain in a decentralized manner, right? So as these tokens have continued to evolve and represent different things, at the end of the day, there's a very strong cultural signal that they each hold. And I think the ones that have outlasted much of what's happening on Pump.Fun and Solana are the ones that are establishing some cultural significance and a movement that can bring people together to act and to unite and do so together. So I think that's worthy of kind of like recognizing, and both from a historical perspective, but also with what's happening with crypto coins today.
That's a really good point. Andre, Phil, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm going to throw in a little different perspective just to kind of introduce entropy to the conversation.
Exactly. Yes.
I agree with both of you. These are amazing kind of bootstrapping mechanisms. And if we even look back at Bitcoin and Ethereum, we have these incentive structures to how do we reward people? How do we earn these things? Bitcoin, you do mining, proof of work. Ethereum, you stake. Both of them, when taken to an extreme, was actually bad. So like Bitcoin, when it was running up half a decade ago, there was a lot of narrative how it's like boiling the oceans because it's using so much electricity, and arguably it, like, yes and no. Like on the one hand, electricity shouldn't be that as big of a deal, but on the other hand, it was obviously not being very efficient. And same thing with Ethereum with proof of stake. We created a very specific curve. We don't want too many validators, because what happens when we have too many validators, the network gets overloaded. The like peer-to-peer network, it gets more expensive to be a validator, so we want some amount of decentralization. So when I'm thinking of these kinds of meme coins and these kinds of community coins, these seem to be these amazing tools for bootstrapping, kind of getting started. I wonder if anyone has given a lot of thought for what do we do after we hit that, when we have like a billion more users? How is that going to look different?
Phil, you're in a position to answer that question.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much to add. I think these guys covered it really well. I think you can't really control when the adoption will happen. You just sort of have to keep your head down and build and be able to survive the drawdowns, because that's a natural part of crypto. So it's hard.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like the conversation kind of like almost helped with segmenting like two kinds of problems. One is if you could use tokenization to actually bootstrap communities and build a subculture. And that seems to be really successful in crypto in general. And meme coin is one of these latest representation. Even you can argue Ethereum and Bitcoin actually did that as well as a sustaining subculture. But at the same time, you also want to reward true contributors and not to dilute the community in a sort of like more sustainable way. And projects that can basically achieve the balance seem to do really well in the space. But decoding their secret recipe is probably the most important thing for us. Humpty.
Yeah, to the point of what Andre said in terms of what happens when you have a billion users, you got to recognize that as Ethereum enthusiasts, users, we have many interests. So a billion of us on Ethereum doesn't mean that a billion of us will be actively doing things that maybe the foundation thinks is important for us to do. There are subcultures within subcultures, right? And I think one of the best examples of this, and I know Nounish Professor would be happy to hear this, are nouns. Nouns do this in terms of like establishing who they are and what audience should be attracted to them, and then they reward or fund subcultures within that organization so that that meme is propagated across a variety of groups who have different interests but are still aligned and have a shared vision. So I think with Ethereum, just because I came and I wanted to signal that I believed in building with decentralized rails, doesn't mean that that's where my interests end. Beyond that, there are interests in, like I said, nounish values. There are interests in creators and working with on-chain media. And because of that, I navigate the gamut of platforms that are available on Ethereum, including Base. I use, platforms like Pods and Hypersub, which are much further downstream from Ethereum. So I think what happens when you have a billion users on Ethereum, well, first of all, you ensure that everyone who's actively contributing to the Ethereum ecosystem, like Base, like Hypersub, like Farcaster, are successful because a lot of them are going to be going to all of these different platforms to find their communities, to build those communities, and to find success themselves.
Yeah, I just want to quickly respond. That's a really awesome point. I really love nouns because they've harnessed this thing as kind of something that makes positive externalities the more it gets bigger, and I think that's amazing. I'm more thinking of DGen and Moxie, and when I say a billion users, I don't mean a billion humans necessarily. I mean like a billion AI agents that have learned really, really well how to like farm the DGens and the Moxies. Why do we do that? But yeah, if the more we can build these kinds of tokens that have good externalities, no matter how big they get, I think that's super important.
I think just one other point, excuse me, one other point to bring up is I think I've been thinking a lot about Farcaster, and let's say Farcaster does eventually get to 1 billion users, for example, or even 100 million. I think about how just like in real life, you can have successful people and successful communities in various places around the world that have no idea that the others exist. So like, in Farcaster, you could have a successful, like we brought up Hire, we brought up Nouns, we brought up, some other communities. You could have a successful community that maybe stops at, 50,000 people. And it looks, and I get that, there's this comparison gets brought up often, like cities, states, countries, that type of thing within crypto. But I do think there's a lot of just, similarities between like you can have successful communities that don't grow to be 1 million people strong. You could have a really successful community that's only 1,000 people or 100 people and have, value still there. So obviously there's going to be some communities that do grow to mass scale, just like we see in, traditional economies. You have in Amazon, you have, companies that grow to mass scale, but there can be successful people like, I'm sitting here in Milwaukee. I'm sure there's a successful plumbing business right down the road that I've never heard of, but they're doing great. And I think there's going to be a lot of comparisons in crypto in that way, where, as the space scales overall, we won't be able to know about everything that's happening in terms of like what is successful from a financial standpoint. So.
Yeah, that was the Cozy Corners thesis, right? I remember that being the big topic at FarCon last May. And we saw this with some of like the general interest channels that got really big. They just weren't that interesting. I mean, it's sort of like food is such a broad topic. It's actually pretty hard to have a group of people organized around food. But these smaller, more niche channels tend to be the ones that have a lot more fervent supporters. And you can be fooled by the top line number, like, hey, it has 150,000 followers. But there might be a community of 1,500 people that's way more active and has a much stronger alignment between the community members inside of them. That's been my big takeaway from the, channels, and especially running something like books, which is just right at the edge of being too big of a category almost. Readers are a little bit weird, and so sort of like we tend to accept other people, but it's pretty hard to have that big of a group and find common interests.
That's such an interesting point. So we need communities of all sizes, but not necessarily every size need to have a token to coordinate and build a community around. So maybe the size also has something to do with that. I think we're about to finish, but I want everyone to maybe give one suggestion or one hot take you have for community entrepreneurs who are trying to build communities and potentially utilizing tokenization. What would be your one suggestion or hot take?
I'll go first. I don't think airdrops work that well. I really don't recommend it for most people. It's sort of like, I don't know what a great example is, steroids or something. Like you get results quickly, but the long-term effects are pretty bad. And I think a lot of people go for the airdrop because it's a great way to get results up front, not have to do the work. And then you're sort of left with a pretty bad cultural debt that you've incurred from a lot of people who have allocations that are mismatched with their long-term ambitions to participate in the community. And so I think you're probably better off doing it manually and giving out tokens by hand early on than you are trying to optimize for a market cap and give to as broad of an audience as possible. There's obviously exceptions that make the rule, but I think the fact that those have succeeded is in spite of doing a big airdrop, not because of it. So,
Great point.
Eric, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Not really a hot take, but I think anyone that's new to Farcaster, and I know gmfarcaster has a bunch of new people that come and see what's, this is a way to learn about what's happening on Farcaster. I think just my only recommendation would be interact with people and try things, like try their products, try to create a channel, reply to people, just be active, because it, if you try to launch a token, if you try to do something, like most people aren't going to remember that you even, like, let's say it fails, like they're just not going to remember, or quite frankly, like most people won't really care that much. So like, just try anything. And I think, people on Farcaster, and I know we had Ted and some others like on the previous panel, everyone's really open here. Like everyone's open to having conversation, open to ideas. And, I just think that that's ultimately, it's a big differentiator here versus on other socials. So that'd be my only recommendation.
Thank you. Andre?
Hiya. Yeah, I kind of want to bring back to what others said. I totally agree. Lots of small communities is going to be extremely powerful and important, especially as we get an infinite number of agents. One angle I've been thinking a lot about, which is kind of a hot take, is I think we need to focus a lot more on how cross-pollination happens between different little communities. I'm in lots of small little group chats, and we share links back and forth a lot, but it's all very disorganized, very haphazard. And I think kind of cross-pollination is going to become increasingly really important in the future as we build more and more of these little communities. So I'd love to see more kind of mindful design around that.
Humpty is going to conclude the panel for me, so I'm so glad you're the last one.
I mean, I've said it before. I think just make sure that you have a clear set of values, for yourself and for what you're building, and define the mission, who it is that you're wanting to connect with and grow a community around, and build. There's nothing, you can't really shortcut any of that. You just really got to put in the work and be very thoughtful from the beginning, because otherwise, even if you drop a token, it doesn't really matter if you don't really have a defined set of values and a mission and people that you want to target.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. I think there are a lot of really good insights. We probably will double down to expand after this conversation. I know Humpty is actually hosting an event in Denver, further expanding some of these conversations. Unfortunately, we don't have time to take more questions, but I'll see you around down Farcaster, and we can keep the conversation live. Thank you.
Bye, y'all. Thanks.
Bye.
And we will be putting these different panels out as recordings as well, so more conversation can happen around that. And Gloria, we're going to transition now to
Yes.
panel 3.
Right.
So
we'll
while we
switch.
do that, we're bringing up Plants and Ash Money and Java Boo and Nate. Nate, gotta get all the A's in there. So welcome to all of you all, and we're going to move into talking about, for panel 3, why people stay and engage, how to build channels people love. So what I'd love, Nate, we lost you. I think you may need to reconnect your devices. We'll bring you back up when you're back. So what I'd love to do first is kind of go around and ask each of you what channels are you curating, creating, building, and what have you seen? Here's Nate. Nate's back. Hold on. So just do a quick intro and then talk about the channel that you are working on and contributing to. And just give us a brief overview of that. And I'll start with Plants/Catwalk.
Sure. Pleasure to be on here. Hello, everybody. Familiar faces. Name's Plants. I've been on Farcaster for about a year and love channels. Specifically, my background, right? Degen turned wannabe builder and content creator. So I'd like to think that I've matured coming through the NFT PFP craze, stuck around during the bear, and then
I
realized
hope
there's
we've
actually a
all
lot more
matured
around.
since then.
We haven't.
Let's hope, right?
Please. Like 95% of the people I've met are still stuck on X. In all of the, I'm not sure we can curse on here, but they're in the shitters. They're not coming over.
By the way, we are broadcasting this on Twitter, so just letting you know.
Well, I mean, I stand behind this to all of, my fellow PFP friends. This is where consumer crypto is happening. And an example of it, right, to bring it full circle, is channels. And so for myself, I'm building Catwalk. It's a very different take than a lot of people on here. I went extremely niche. Like as niche as possible, because I felt somewhat overwhelmed with all the possibilities when you join the app. And so I figured, let me learn my space by getting as niche as possible on my content. And maybe there's a couple other creators out there. So I used Catwalk as a breeding ground to try all the fun buttons, and has since turned into a community of random cat lovers who take their cats on walks around the world. So super niche, super different.
I wasn't sure if it was
going
going to be people who take cats on a leash for a walk, or if it was you're just really into fashion and you just strut all the time. You're too sexy for this catwalk. I wasn't sure. Could have gone either way.
Yeah, the Google searches I've been seeing if it pops up anywhere aren't very promising. But no, if you look at any of my videos, we live stream our walks. I am not one for fashion.
I love it.
I am brutal there.
You
could
have been surprising. It could have been a surprise. You never know. But I love that. So how are you finding in terms of how do people are finding you? It's just from posting, and then all of a sudden they're like, I also have a cat and I like to walk them on a leash. I love that.
It's I think it's just being so unique and different and being unapologetically authentic. There's people on here that aren't cat people at all, but they'll see another post and think of us. and they'll tag me, and then I'll bring that person into the community. And again, because it is so niche driven, my issues are different than nature or I took a photo, where people are going there for farming. Now, we do have some of that because we'll talk about incentives. I've used my personal tipping stuff to get better content, build habits, etc. But I mean, my issues are different there. I just need quality content with people following the rules. And that's where Cura comes in and some of their tools to try and get on topic, right?
Yeah,
That's my issue.
Keep it on the topic. I love that. Ash Money, let me go to you, and if you can do a quick intro and talk about which channels you're involved in building.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I've been on Farcaster, I think, for about 2 years now. And the channel that I'm working on is called Football, or Soccer for the Americans.
Oh boy.
That was quite a sensitive topic when we started
fighting
the channel.
words. Do you realize that's one of our lightning round questions, right? When we do interviews for the first time with somebody on GM Farcaster, we just say soccer or football, and their answer is always telling if they're American or not. It's really funny.
So we definitely call it Football, and that's the name of the channel as well. So it's just a space for people to kind of chat with other football fans, share any news, or mostly it's making fun of each other, to be honest, a lot of the time. So after a result, usually we see a lot of people posting like after the game ends. It's just a fun space where we kind of talk about football in general, and also different clubs that we support. And yeah, it's been going, I think, for about a year now, and it's just kind of been going from strength to strength. We've looked at adding a token through Cura. We haven't quite found the right model yet, so we decided to not go ahead with the token launch. But we have also issued rewards through Cura. So every month we issue rewards. The first month we issued Degen. Second month we did Moxie, and I think we're probably going to do higher next month. So just kind of rotating through the different Farcaster ecosystem tokens. But yeah, that's the channel. It's been growing well. We're quite strict with who can join the channel. So at the moment, you need to get an invite. We previously allowed anyone to join, and it was just chaos.
And then there were just people in there. There were these people in there with their American football and ruined the whole thing. I get it.
Chaos. But yeah, that's football. You can check it out and let us know what you think. Thanks.
Nate, to you now. What channels are you building, developing, involved with?
Too many channels. The most recent channels I've been involved in is the Loom and Luminous. So inspired by the Luminous token that Ethernet launched. Initially I felt the need to spin off a side channel called Luminous, separate from Loom, just that you could talk about the token, whatever. But Luminous is like building at the intersection of AI and on-chain communities. And then from there, we've also like created other small, like tiny channels around building like Loom protocol, where we're talking about and trying to build some agentic infrastructure. And then another one that's just kind of starting, LIT, the Luminous Institute of Technology, that we'll see how that one goes. So there's a lot of things. I'm trying things.
The Luminous Institute of Technology. I kind of love that. That's lit. It's lit.
Yeah.
It just is. It's lit. I love it. Javaboo, let me go to you. What channels are you, give us a quick little intro. What channels are you creating, working on, modding, etc.?
Yeah, so I'm spending the vast majority of my time modding and then curating politics. It's mostly United States politics, but ever so often
doing God's work.
Ever so often
Lord help you.
Posts on there. But really, I think the mission of the politics channel is to have a space that we can kind of break down silos. I think what we're seeing is like Twitter has become very heavily Republican. You're kind of getting a shift of people that are more Democrat going to Blue Sky and kind of leaving, and we're just like becoming more and more siloed. And I am really hoping that at least on Farcaster, we can start building that community where we can have conversations of why do you support this policy? Why are you supporting this politician? I don't support them for X reason. And even if you can't find that common ground, can find the humanity behind all of that. I'm actually pretty new to the crypto space. I came in at like the tail end of 2020 with all the NFTs, so I bought all your bags.
Thank you. We have more if you'd like.
Yeah, yeah, I'll just keep buying. But came to the space. I'm actually a former lobbyist and have been working in politics for a while. And I just thought it would be really valuable to have a space where we can actually have conversations about politics and not just kind of go into those hateful comments back and forth.
Like interesting and thoughtful conversation about politics. Yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to just yelling at each other about politics.
Yeah.
I love it.
And then we've been doing monthly rewards as well. I have a leaderboard. So at the end of every month, we have a tipped Politicos group that it's about 25 of the top casters get all of my Degen tips for the next month. And then we also have a NFT that we give out weekly, recognizing kind of members that are upholding the values that we're trying to promote.
I got one of those one week. I guess I don't. So I have a background in politics, and I'm also an attorney. And I basically turned off all my politics stuff for like a few years, and I just slowly tiptoed back in a few months ago. So because I was other platforms were just too toxic to have any kind of just intelligent conversation. So it's been nice to have that. I'm still trying to manage it so I don't go overboard. And but that was a really nice reward and recognition that I wasn't even aware of. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. Thank you. Thank you for that. That was very nice. So that is a perfect segue. And a couple of you have mentioned some rewards and things you're doing to sort of encourage and reward your good community members. So this is one of the questions from the team. Community retention is tough. In your experience, what makes people stay engaged in a channel long term? And it says apart from usual rounds and meme coins, but I'd say both things, like any kind of rewards that you're building in, but also what else do you find is useful? Humpty mentioned on the first panel that he uses rituals in his channel. So things like that. And I'll go back to Plants/Catwalk to kind of start us off, and then we'll circle through.
Sure. Catwalk being a niche channel, I think we have unique issues or problems or solutions for this one. And so for us specifically, the best way to have meaningful conversations is to spend the extra time to put a meaningful comment. We're talking about walking cats. This is more like a spectacle people come to our channel to watch. It's like a reality TV show or a train wreck, right? This isn't coming here to show off.
This literally might turn into my new favorite channel.
I mean, people don't know anything about it, right? And so the way I look at this, it's entertainment. Amazing. It's entertainment. We always hear from Dan, more interesting content. Well, not everyone likes cats, but I can tell you what, this is something that's interesting and unique. And so for me, it's about finding 5, 7, anyone besides me that is willing to put content out there and share this very unique experience. And so mine was all about, are these people farming? Are they BSing? Are they using AI? I asked very specific questions that you only would know the answer to if you walk your cat or you take your cat outside. And so for me, yes, rewards are nice, but catwalking is a lonely experience. I'm the only person in Vegas I've ever seen do it. I've traveled to almost every state in America. I've only seen it happen twice, and it was both in Oregon, right? So like, point being, this is lonely. And so the internet is a place for people to connect, meaningful, in-depth conversations about niche topic. That's how we were able to succeed and build community. Then other people start watching and asking questions, and it becomes a feeding frenzy in a good way.
All right, everyone needs to go follow Catwalk channel right now because, like, I'm kind of excited that I've now learned about this channel. Very excited about it. Yes, you will be seeing Catwalk on GM/Farcaster very soon. Ash Money, how are you keeping members of your community engaged, and what do you find is working well in regards to that?
Yeah, on our side, I think the one learning that we picked up quite quickly was just issuing rewards is not the best way to go about it. So we kind of keep it a bit more random. We don't really have a set structure in terms of how much rewards we are issuing or when we are issuing the rewards. So it's kind of random, which makes it a bit harder to game. The one thing that we found works really well is adding, I don't want to say utility, adding games to the rewards. So some of the rewards we do are based on predicting the outcome of a match score, for example. And those rewards we kind of see do a lot better versus just kind of airdropping a bunch
It
of
seems like
tokens
there
to
would be
people.
some good synergy with Bracket for maybe
Definitely
yeah.
is.
At least,
I-
as they expand and grow, it would seem like that would be a good fit for maybe connecting.
That would be
But yeah,
awesome.
yeah. I see you've got some fans in the chat. They're throwing up the soccer balls. I call them soccer balls. Love that. Nate, how are you keeping people engaged in your channels?
Yeah, I've definitely been heavily using contests. The way I think of contests is more of like a talent discovery mechanism or like a entry way into the community. But long term, I feel like people want to, well, and different from catwalking, obviously. Channels are
I
different.
gotta say, I didn't see the overlap of catwalk and football coming, but there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, at least for us, I think people want to be a part of something that has a vision that kind of has a long-term direction. Doesn't need to have like a concrete roadmap, but something where you feel like this could become something, right? That long-term grows and it expands. And then I think there's also something about finding the place where people's interests meet their skill set. So people have the skills to contribute and the interest in contributing to the community. Because like one thing, trying to encourage people in the community to work on the protocol stuff or agentic infrastructure. I feel like we don't have as much of a technical community so far, so there hasn't been as much engagement there. But it is, which was my hope, bringing in a few new people to the community. So I think where people have the skills to contribute and the interest to show up, I think that's kind of key.
It seems like that particular channel would find a lot of just general interest, even if people aren't just because they're curious about that intersection right now, especially where you even have in the US, a new czar who's specifically looking at crypto and AI. So it makes a lot of sense that there would be some interest there. Javaboo, you mentioned already NFT, but how else are you keeping people engaged? And also, how are you keeping fistfights away from the channel? Just curious.
So I'll speak first about the NFT. So this is something that's relatively new. We've been doing it for months, but we launched a Politicos NFT. So kind of going back into a few years ago, or I guess last year, with the Farcats. It's just cats dressed up as politicians. So we send that out every single week, and really it's just to recognize a member of the community. And I think those types of recognitions, even if there's if you get that NFT, you get added to a DGen microsub list where you get I think it's 5 cents every 3 days or something. It's not that much. But I was seeing that just kind of the personal recognition. I pinned that to the kind of main chat. Everyone kind of welcomes them to the family, and just kind of recognizing people, I think, has driven that community and had more buy-in overall. I will say that we also have some great mods that I've been working with for the past year since we launched this channel that really uphold that value. And we have conversations about members, and we do ban people from the politics channel. It's usually people that are just kind of spamming the channel, but sometimes we have had to ban other members if they weren't upholding the values that we were looking for. And I think the last thing that we have is a soulbound membership NFT. So you actually have to pay, it's about $10 to join the politics channel. And I think having that small kind of buy-in of saying, I do want to participate, I'm willing to pay X amount, has kind of helped us generate that community that we're looking for.
Yeah, that definitely creating maybe little barriers, not huge ones, but if you're trying to curate a community, that can be really helpful to at least keeping out, just straight up farmer spammer kind of thing. By the way, yeah, the cat AI bot cats dressed up in Politico suits playing football. There we go. I mean, somebody build. I wanted to double click on something you said about recognition, because I think that I don't want to overlook that, because I think that's more important than people realize, that a lot of times it's not something monetary or tangible. It's more just the recognition of, oh, hey, you see me and appreciate what I'm contributing here, can be really important. And we've seen that with when we shout out people for GM Farcaster. We thought people were going to, like, we weren't sure how people were going to take that. Like if they were, feeling like it was spammy or what, but overall, like we never have anybody, like everyone's really appreciative of it when we just shout them out and just say, hey, we showed your cast on our show today. And they're like, wow, they just feel good that they've been seen. So I like that, idea of just even shouting out your community members. We do the same thing with those who are in our chat every day. And it takes a little bit of extra work, but it's worth it to be like, hey, I appreciate that you show up for us. And we want to make sure that you know that. I think that is, underappreciated. So is something as simple as that can be super helpful. We've got a couple more questions, but I'm going to hone in on one more because we're running short on time. What in your experience can make a channel feel more like home rather than just another feed? So I guess that kind of relates to what we just talked about. It's like, how do you get people coming back every day to sort of contribute to that channel? And is there anything, any suggestions you may have for that, or anything that you've seen that doesn't work, that you tried and you're like, well, that really didn't work? Because sometimes that's the best learning we can have, for sure. And I'll leave that open to whoever wants to jump in first.
I'll jump in first here. For me, it's about, remember, people are sharing basically part of their family members, right? So they're exposing, they're opening up their heart, they're sharing something they love. And so the most important thing, at least from my experience, is remembering a detail about either the cat's name, where they're from, if it reminds you of another person. Oh, you're also from Iran. We have a bunch of people from Iran in our community. Here's some other people, right? Just introducing each other. That was really big, because you're basically saying, hey, like, I think this other person's community would enjoy this. It's just connecting two other strangers, and I'm the intermediary. So it's making people feel comfortable by remembering something specific about their family member. And specifically, as we go forward, the way I envision this is, because all these casts are on chain, eventually I would like to have a historian for my channel. It'd be a bot. It remembers everyone's cat's names, where they're from. It encourages the rules of engagement in the channel as well, and plays like kind of moderator, so we don't have to. But mainly, it makes people feel comfortable and remembered. That's the most important.
I love that. And we Adrian just developed a GM Farcaster bot, and that was one of the parts of it, was just to like be a historian, if you will, and be the thing that we can go, hey, did we ever talk about this at all, and pull those episodes and give us links to it. And it could be very similar, like, hey, did we ever have a cat that was XYZ? That would be a cool thing to have in there. Ash Money, you want to go next? Like, what have you found has worked? Any experiments that you've done that haven't? How do you create it as a home that people want to come back to every day?
Yeah, what has worked for us is we make the members feel like they're part of the decision-making process of the channel. So before we launched the Cura leaderboard, we had a proposal where channel members could vote on whether we should launch it or not. We did the same with the channel NFT, and we actually did the same with the token. And we've seen that doing those kind of proposals, even though it's not like a technical DAO, it kind of creates that buy-in from the community. So that's one thing that has worked really well. Another thing that has worked well is sharing more real stories. So we had Afro Chick's, her brother is a football player, and he did a kind of like a community call. So that was really cool. You've got people going to games. Somebody went to a game, I think in Seattle this week, where it was like freezing, and they had a picture of them at the game. So bringing those kind of real stories into the channel also helps a lot, just to step away from all the kind of trash talk and kind of banter. So yeah, those two things would be my.
I think you kind of you kind of mentioned the AMA, and that to me is a great way to building like these little mini events in your channel, and it can be as simple as an AMA that's happening in your channel. It could be all text, it can be video, whatever. But I think that is a great approach too for certain channels. You know, it's not going to work for everything, but I think that's great. I love what you said about buy-in from the channel members. I think that is always fantastic. That makes it feel more like a community. And coming from the world of DAOs, that's not always easy, but it is. It's definitely a great way to do. And we have a lot of tools that are already built into Farcaster, and frames and things like that. You can use Ponder as something as simple as that, or there's other, I think it's, God, is it VocDoc, something like that, that has like a voting tool. So there's a lot of tools that are already built out within the Farcaster ecosystem for that approach. Nate, how about you? What else? How do you make it feel like home? And what kind of experiments maybe that haven't worked or worked for you?
Yeah, I think maybe home isn't the right analogy for me, but places of belonging, places of contribution, places where you can meaningfully participate and feel like your participation is valued is kind of so I think that there's been a balance of providing vision and then having early people be able to like shape the vision and direction and being part of it, because nobody shows up if there's no like vision or direction to start with, but also allowing a lot of input to shape the vision. And then I think there's also this balance of being a closed and open community where and also public private, how much is like private in group chats and how much is public on the feed. I think my initial mistake is I was trying to make everything public, like everything is, but people don't want to like say, they want to like, hey, some people don't want to just put everything out there in public, but avoiding like any sort of backroom chatter about whatever, but to allow some closed private spaces. And then like welcoming, like allowing welcome to new people, even if they don't quite know the culture or the community yet. They're just here for the contest, to still be open to engaging with our participation. So that's kind of some thoughts in that area.
Yeah, love that. And there was something you just said, and now I just lost it, that I was going to comment on. There's in terms of what you're doing. Oh, I know what it was. Group chats can be another aspect of this, where you can tie together, especially if your channel has a token or has some kind of gating to it. You can build that into a group chat too, where if you wanted something that felt a little more private, that would definitely be a possibility to connect it with your channel as well. And Javaboo, how about for you in terms of how are you making it? And this may not be the same for politics, but making it feel like home, or making it feel like, maybe for you, it might be making it feel like a comfortable place, especially where people might feel scared to wander into the politics channel.
Yeah, I think overall, like when I first launched politics, I was trying to grow it as fast as possible. We had you could easily join. We were trying just to add as many members as to get that conversation going. And I think I've shifted that thinking to being like, if we don't add a new member for weeks, that's completely fine. Like if we are, right now we have a good core group, but there's probably about 100 to 200 of us that comment and have discussions every day, every week. And I am fully comfortable with that. And we have more and more people kind of joining the channel, just as they're not able to cast in the channel, but they're able to view the channel and that continues to grow. So it's showing that we're having conversations that people are viewing. But I think slow growth is now kind of where my focus is on. Like, we have really good members. I want to support those members. And if we slowly add more and more, that's great. But I don't need to have 10,000 people talking about politics.
We just call that Twitter. Yeah, we just call that Twitter. I do want to pull a couple things from the chat in here really quick as we finish up. Whoops. There was a comment about AI agents rather than bots. And actually, that's what I meant. I think I used the word bot, but I actually meant an AI agent. So like what Adrian had developed for GM Farcaster is actually an AI agent. So it's definitely different. And then there's also a comment in here about, to be honest, nothing will gather and hold people in a channel except rewards. I disagree, and so do some people in the chat. So rewards can help, but it may not be the only factor. And also rewards if it's done well, I agree, it can be a way to really help keep those who are engaged, but it doesn't necessarily lead to quality. So that's the one thing you have to just keep in mind. And sometimes you need to tweak those things to figure out that right balance that makes sense. Like, I think some of you all have experimented and talked about that, and then figuring out what is the way to do rewards that make sense for those who are contributing, especially organically, and who are really adding to the conversation and the importance of the channel. So yeah, I agree. I agree that you got to figure out the farmer part of this and make sure it doesn't distract from why you created the channel in the first place. Like, I'm assuming that you don't create a catwalk channel for monetary gain, but maybe you do. I don't know.
If you can get enough people and they all stream, it might be an interesting thing. But yeah.
I think there's actually probably a really good possibility there. Very fantastic. We are going to wrap here. This has been so much fun. It's been great to get to know you all. Go follow all these amazing channels that we've been talking about today. We're going to be back tomorrow at the same time with 3 more panels. So we'll be hearing from other channel owners, creators who are doing the work, and take some more questions then as well. So anything else that you guys want to shout out really quick as we wrap this up? Are we good? All right. Thank you all. This has been fantastic. And thanks everybody for popping in. And we will see you tomorrow. And with that, bye-bye.